Fertilizer in aquaculture. Pond fertilizer is an important component of semi-intensive to intensive aquaculture pond management that supports successful production of the culture organism. Semi-intensive and intensive culture pond management fall along the intensive to hyperintensive management continue and are characterized by high stocking rate of the culture animals, limited use of fertilizer use of compound or complete feeds, and water quality monitoring and management including use of mechanical aerator. Fertilizer sources are chemical fertilizer or organic matter fertilizer, which include agricultural byproducts and animals' manures. Chemical fertilizer typically is composed of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium compound that dissolve readily to provide nutrients to phytoplankton. Organic fertilizer includes agriculture byproducts, for example, rice bran, cotton seeds, meal, and animal manures. For example, poultry litter, cow manure, which first must undergo decomposition to release nutrients for phytoplankton growth. The development of phytoplankton blooms that provide dissolved oxygen, utilize excreted feed nitrogen, shade out benthic vegetation, and provide contrast for fish to locate and consume floating extruded feed and the control of clay turbidity. Pond natural food web. Pond fertilizations supplies exogenous sources of key nutrients to stimulate primary and secondary productivity that forms the base of the aquaculture pond food web. Primary production is chemically fertilized fish pond was 4 to 5 times greater than in a fertilized pond. Secondary production referred that all heterotrophic organisms that convert the chemical energy of their food into biomass and are comprised of grazer and decomposers such as phytoplankton, protozoa, nematodes, oligochaetes, insects, mollusks, and bacteria. Through photosynthesis, phytoplankton transport solar energy and organic nutrients into biomass, which forms a base of the natural food web. Nutrients and form of water. Phytoplankton required many elements classified either as micronutrients. Groundwater concentrations of these elements are more variable than in surface waters, even at the same geographic location. Nitrogen too is present in the water in dissolved inorganic and organic forms. Enzymes are free. Amino acid and peptides are among the form of organic nitrogen and are products of biological activity. Ammonia, ammonium nitrates, and nitrates ions are common forms of inorganic nitrogen. Dissolved ammonia is in equilibrium with ammonium, and the proportion of each are affected mainly by pH and temperature. Bacteria decomposition of organic matter and excretion by animals are the main sources of ammonia. Through nitrifications which occur under aerobic condition, bacteria oxidize ammonia first to nitrate and subsequently to nitrate. Although phytoplankton can assimilate ammonium nitrate and nitrite. Ammonium is the most favorable energetically because nitrite must be reduced prior to assimilation. Organic and inorganic forms of carbon are found dissolved in water carbonate, bicarbonate, and release. When limestone is dissolved by carbon dioxide and is larger source of in this ion in water. Phytoplankton uptake carbon dioxide and carbonates ions as carbon sources. Deficiency or more than one nutrients concentration can limit phytoplankton growth, and supplying the deficient nutrients in needed concentration will allow rapid growth. Because phytoplankton growth in aquaculture pond is limited, most common commonly by carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Liming and fertilization strategies focus on providing these nutrients. Liming. Some fertilizer application does not produce the desired response by phytoplankton. One possible cause by the acidic pond mud and low total alkalinity. Total alkalinity is a measure of the titratable bases and natural waters, of which bicarbonates, carbonates, and hydroxide are taken as predominant. Limestone is added to aquaculture pond to increase the pH of pond soil and total alkalinity of pond water. Pond soil can be absorb fertilizer phosphorus quickly, especially when granular fertilizer broadcasts over the pond surface sink to the bottom. And phosphorus absorption is similar across a variety of soil types. Pond soils are limed to achieve a final pH of 6.5 to 7. They found the soil pH in a soil water microcosm increased from 5.0 to 6.9 or 7.1 in 1 week for soil treatment with limestone particles smaller than 0.106 millimeter, whereas soil treatment with particles smaller than 0.25 millimeter needed the 10 weeks to attain pH 6.5. Water in equilibrium with pure calcium carbonates and atmospheric carbon dioxide will have a pH of 8.3. Early morning pH and pH during intensive summer photosynthesis was greater than 8.4, which indicated that bicarbonate was the dissolved in organic carbon source for photosynthesis. Chemical fertilizer. Nutrients added by use of commercially formulated chemical fertilizer generally are limited to the primary micronutrients nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Commercial fertilizer levels specify the guaranteed minimum percentage in order of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. By convention, fertilizer phosphorus and potassium content are quantified as a percent phosphate and percent potash, respectively. Agricultural limestone is a source of calcium and often serves as filler in blended granule fertilizer. Dolomitic limestone provides both calcium and magnesium. Nitrogen. Industrial production of nitrogen fertilizer begins with the synthesis of ammonia by reacting under pressure atmospheric nitrogen and the source of hydrogen, usually from natural gas, using the Behavior-Broch process. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security regulates the sales of ammonium nitrates because it can be used in explosives, and the ammonium sulfate are white granular fertilizer. Monoammonium phosphate and diammonium phosphate are grayish granular fertilizer. Phosphorus. Fertilizer are manufactured from rock phosphates, but rock phosphate itself alone is directly as a fertilizer because of its low availability of phosphorus and transport cost. Phosphoric acid usually is not used directly as a fertilizer because it is corrosive, but is used to manufacture other fertilizer. The reaction of phosphoric acid with finely ground rock phosphate yield triple superphosphate or TSP. Potassium. Chloride is the most common potassium source for fertilizer. Is known as muriate of potash and is highly water soluble. State of Saskatchewan, Canada. Potassium chloride color range from white to pink to red. The pink and red colors caused by inclusion of heritate which do not affect potassium availability. Three other potassium fertilizer are potassium sulfate, potassium nitrate, and potassium magnesium sulfate. Organic fertilizer. Organic fertilizer comprise the variety of plant-derived materials that range from fresh or dried plant materials to animal manure and litters to agriculture byproducts. Nitrogen and phosphorus content is lower or substantially lowered in organic fertilizer compared to chemical fertilizer. Moisture content is another factor that reduces or dilutes the nitrogen and phosphorus concentration of organic fertilizer. Nutrients values of natural manure is more variable than that agricultural byproducts. The organic carbon content or organic fertilizer can be equal. The greater importance is nitrogen and phosphorus content. The application of organic fertilizer promote increase a heterotrophic bacteria biomass which stimulate other secondary productivity and mineralized nutrients stimulate primary productivity. The recommended application method for fresh animal manure, for example, cattle, swine, is to take a manure water slurry that is slush over the fund surface. Poultry litter can be applied by broadcasting over the fund surface. Poultry litter is bedding material such as wood chips, shaving, and rice hull as a possible to sawdust can decompose and accumulate on the pond bottom which is undesirable. Agricultural byproducts, for example, alfalfa meal's rice bran can be broadcast over the pond surface along the windwork bark and mix of water to make a slurry that is splashed over pond surface. Solubility of chemical fertilizer. Chemical fertilizer is available in granule, water-soluble, and liquid forms. Granular fertilizer can be applied to funds by broadcasting the granules over the water surface, allowing them to dissolve as they sink through the water column. Fertilizer granules vary in size. This affect their solubility as they sink through water column. Most nitrogen and in nitrogen-only fertilizer dissolve as a granule sink through the water column. However, only a small percentage of nitrogen and phosphorus from MAP and DAP and phosphorus from superphosphate and TSP dissolve as granule sinks to the pond bottom. Liquid fertilizers are commonly used in agriculture and increasing in aquaculture. Ammonium polyphosphate is a common liquid fertilizer, and the standard of costume liquid fertilizer blend are available from agricultural nutrient supplier. Fertilizer frequency. Fertilizer can be applied on a fixed schedule or in response to some water quality variable or measure of phytoplankton productivity. Application frequency also can vary between chemical and organic fertilizer because nutrients from chemical fertilizer are available sooner for phytoplankton growth, whereas organic fertilizer first must undergo bacteria decomposition before nitrogen and phosphorus concentrations increase. Availability of inorganic carbon as measured by total alkalinity and clay turbidity as a measure of total fixed soils accounted for 60% of the variability in net primary production in this pond. Fixed rate fertilization program can lead to nutrients accumulation and primary conduction being limited light availability because of self-shading. Fertilization regimes. Pond preparation. Just a farmer prepares land for planting a crop by liming the soils and eliminating weeds. So too much pond be prepared in order for a fertilization program and ultimately the production of the culture organism. To be successful, liming of fund is one important preparatory activity that was discussed early. Fund are fertilized to stimulate primary and secondary production. Primary production is aquaculture, refers to phytoplankton that benthic and emergent microphytes which if present will outcompete phytoplankton for fertilizer nutrients. Once established and find microphytes population will flourish in response to nutrients for fertilizer and feeds and require a desirable effort to control. Dense microphytes population can invade the culture organism from accessing formulated feed, fancy for sampling and harvest, and mechanical aeration. Pond fertilization example for young of year culture. Chemical and organic fertilizer are applied to increase natural productivity for young of year culture organisms as is means to promote rapid growth and improve survival before and during feed training. Fertilized feed combination. Feeding of formulated feed often begins as soon as juvenile culture organisms are stuck into the pond for growth to stacker size or market size. However, juveniles may not require formulated feed until growth of the culture organism slows because it no longer can consume the natural food organism efficiently, or the biomass of natural food organism no longer can support rapid growth. Future trends. Fertilization recommendation for aquaculture ponds generally are derived from research conducted the aquacultural experiment station. While such recommendations apply broadly to ponds with similar soils and water types, they often generalize to an entire regions or larger area. Through such trials, not only can data be collected on the effectiveness of the fertilizer recommendation, but also on the fund history and local fund soil and water quality. So, dito sa fertilizer in aquaculture, nabanggit natin dito ang um, pond natural web, nutrients and form in water, liming, chemical fertilizer, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, organic fertilizer, solubility of chemical fertilizer, fertilization frequency, fertilization regimes, pond fertilization example for young of year culture, fertilizer feed combination at future trends. So, hindi ko na i-explain isa-isa. Ang i-explain ko na lang kung paano gamitin o ano nga ba ang pwedeng gamiting fertilizer para sa aquaculture. So, ayan. Ano nga ba ang fertilizer? So, we have the most common fertilizer used nationwide or worldwide in aquaculture. Triple superphosphate and urea. Triple superphosphate is made by treating rock phosphate with phosphoric acid. So, 'di ba, ang mga farmer ay bumibili ng mga sako-sakong pataba para sa palaisdaan. Ilang kilo ba ang isang sako? So, 50 kilos. Then sa label nun, may mababasa kang 1620 and 2025, then triple 14 o yung tinatawag nating 14 14 14 o di kaya 4600 or 0060. Ano nga ba ang mainam na gamitin na fertilizer para sa palaisdaan? Karamihan, ang fertilizer ay ginagamit sa mga prutas, gulay at halaman. Paano naman sa palaisdaan? Ano-ano ba itong primary plants nutrients na madalas nating nakikita sa label? Ito yung proportion niya. Alam natin yung fertilizer na ginagamit sa halaman like yung urea, 'di ba? Pag bibili kayo ng urea, naka-label doon yung 4600. Ibig sabihin, mas mataas yung percentage ng nitrogen, at ang nitrogen, ito yung pinaka-importanteng nutrients na kailangan para sa halaman. Ito rin yung ginagamit para sa tumubo mga halaman para maging malusog yung mga ugat at dahon. Ito namang tinatawag na complete. Example, ito yung 14-14-14 or trifol 14. 14% yung nitrogen, 14% yung phosphorus, at 14% yung potassium. Ito yung tinatawag na complete fertilizer. Ito ay ginagamit para sa mga namumulaklak na halaman. Yung 14% na nitrogen ay pampalusog ng ugat sa kadahon. Yung 14% na potassium, ito yung pampalaki ng bunga at pampatamis para din ito sa photosynthesis, para sa pag-update ng CO2 at para rin sa pag-regulate ng water update. Another 14% ng phosphorus naman, ito ay tumutulong para sa pamumulaklak ng halaman. Yung tinatawag nila na 0060, ito yung potash, ito naman yung inilalagay kapag namumunga na yung halaman, tapos minsan inahalo nila yung potash sa complete fertilizer para lalong sumarap yung bunga ng halaman. Ngayon, ano naman ang fertilizer para sa palaisdaan para magpalumot or para maging mataba yung lupa or tubig? Pwede mong gamitin ang 16-20-0, yung potash ay yung phosphate fertilizer, dahil ito ang dapat para sa palaisdaan o pond. Ito yung pinaka-effective na inorganic fertilizer para sa palaisdaan. Kaya kung sakaling gagamit kayo ng fertilizer para sa palaisdaan, ang hanapin nyo ay yung phosphate fertilizer. Para sa generally, yung phosphorus, kasi ito yung tinatawag na liming primary nutrients na kadalasang wala din sa tubig sa palaisdaan para sa magandang pagtubo ng lumot. So, need maglagay ng phosphorus ay ng phosphate fertilizer para tumubo yung mga algae. Napansin nyo sa fertilizer na 16-20-0, mas mataas yung phosphorus kaysa sa nitrogen, at sa potassium naman halos wala, kasi ang potassium halos hindi naman kailangan para sa palaisdaan. Depende na lang kung ang palaisdaan ay sobrang swampy, but generally di na kailangan ng potassium content para sa fertilizer. Kaya most of the fertilizer na mabibili nyo under the phosphate fertilizer, mas mataas yung potassium content niya or pinakakailangan ng tubig para makapagpatubo ng phytoplanktonic algae. Yun kasi yung missing nutrients sa tubig sa palaisdaan, yung phosphorus. Kaya kadalasang mas mababa yung nitrogen kaysa sa phosphorus, kasi yun talaga yung pinakakailangan. Kaya kung bibili ka ng fertilizer, make sure na mas mataas yung phosphorus content dun sa label. For example, 8,000 per square meter, isang sako ng kailangan na pataba doon. 50 kilos yun kada isang sako. Kailangan, pag naglagay ka ng abono, dapat hindi masyadong malalim yung tubig. Kailangan nasa talampakan lang ang lalim, hanggang sa 8 inches. 1.5 talampakan dapat yung nasisinagan siya ng araw at nakikita yung pan bottom niya. Dapat malinaw din yung tubig. Halimbawa, naglagay ka ng fertilizer 2 weeks na pero hindi pa rin tumutubo yung lumot. Dahil may mga factors kasi kaya nangyayari yon. Una, baka yung quality ng lupa masyado ng acidic. Kaya nung naglagay ka ng tubig, naging acidic na rin yung tubig. Hindi naman kasi lahat ng nagre-respond yung fertilizer kapag acidic yung tubig. Kaya kapag ganun yung fertilizer, kaya kapag ganun yung case, maglagay ka ng lime, agriculture lime, para ma-neutralize niya yung acidity. O di kaya naman masyadong malalim yung tubig, 'di ba napansin niyo kapag yung palaisdaan is sa mababaw na area, kadalasan nandun yung mga lumot sa pinakamababaw. Diba? Mas mabilis sila dun tumubo. At dun naman sa part na medyo malalim, halos walang lumot. Mahirap tumubo ang lumot. Kasi nga, hindi naaabot ng araw yung pond bottom. Masyado nang malalim. Kailangan talaga ng sunlight para kapag tumubo, para sa makapagpatubo ng lumot. O kaya naman masyadong maputik, laging malabo yung tubig, may mga isda-isda pang gumagalaw, tapos ang labo-labo ng tubig. Hindi talaga mabubuhay ang lumot pag malabo ang tubig. Therefore, kailangan malinaw, o kaya naman pag naglagay ka ng fertilizer, maulan o di kaya ng fertilizer, make sure kapag naglagay ka ng fertilizer, dapat yung hindi maulan, dapat mainit, para na ano ng araw yung pond bottom, para mas mabilis tumubo yung mga lumot. Kasi pag naglagay ka ng fertilizer na maulan or yung makulimlim, hindi talaga tutubo yung mga algae. So mahirap talaga magpatubo ng mga lumot pag ganun, dahil kailangan kasi nasisinaga ng araw yung pond bottom, tumutubo ang lumot. Dapat, para tumubo ang lumot, dapat naglagay ka ng fertilizer. Halimbawa, naglagay ka ng fertilizer 10 to 15 days. Dapat mayroon ka na makikitang tumutubong lumot. Halimbawa, naglagay ka ng fertilizer in 2 weeks, may tumubo ng lumot. Pwede ka pang maglagay ulit ng granules ng fertilizer para mas lalong dumami or madagdagan yung lumot. So, kapag gagamit ka ng fertilizer para sa palaisdaan, ang piliin mo ay yung phosphate fertilizer. Gaya nga ng nasabi ko kanina, meron tayong iba't ibang uri ng fertilizer o pangpataba na pwedeng gamitin, like animal manure, from cattle, from sa poultry, ganun. Paalala na bawal maggamit ng sariwang dumi ng hayop tulad ng cattle at iba pa, because it consume a lot of oxygen from the water, especially when it is decomposing, and this can be very dangerous to your fish. Maaring maapektuhan dito yung mga isda nyo kapag gumamit kayo ng sariwa. So, kailangan kapag gagamit kayo ng mga animal manure, you need to dry, o kailangan mo siyang tuyuin na maigi. Always remember, dry does not necessarily means decompose. So, explain ko na rin dito, pahapiyawan ko na din kung paano ba gamitin ang animal manure o kung paano ito i-apply. So, you put it in the structure at the one corner of the pond. Put a manure in a perforated bag or net materials. Yung sako na nasa gilid ng pond is suspended into water using a string tied onto a peg on the side on the pond. The bag should be agitated regularly to release more nutrients into the water. You need to spread manure on the pond bottom. Fill the pond to above 10 to 30 cm and leave it for 2 weeks or until it's turned green. Fill it to capacity. Ang mga animal manure tinatawag natin itong or inorganic fertilizer. Paano naman kapag ka organic fertilizer yung ginamit mo? Ay, inorganic fertilizer yung ginamit mo. So, yun ni... Janang, lumayas kayo dyan. May ginagawa ko. Pumunta kayo doon. Buisit kayo dyan pa kayo mag-iingay So, you need to calculate the amount of required for your fund. Sa DPA, 2 grams per square meter at sa urea, 3 grams per square meter. Then, mix the fertilizer with water and stir until it is dissolved. Sprinkle this mixture into the pan. Try to cover as much water surface as possible. Avoid broadcasting fertilizer directly into your pan surface. The granules will sink into the bottom and the nutrients will be permanently trapped there. So, hindi mo siya kailangan na irekta. Dapat, kailangan mo siyang ihalo sa tubig, yung fertilizer, ihalo mo siya sa tubig, then halo-haloin mo hanggang sa matunaw bago mo siya ilalagay sa pan para mas maganda. So, paano naman i-apply ang inorganic fertilizer? Dapat, kapag gagamit ka ng inorganic fertilizer, calculate mo yung weight at amount na required sa pan mo, ganun. Sa DPA, kailangan mong gumamit ng 2 grams per square meter at sa urea naman, 3 grams per square meter. Then, mix the fertilizer with water and stir until it is fully dissolved. This mixture into the pan, try to cover as much water surface as possible. Avoid broadcasting fertilizer directly into your pan surface. The granule will sink into the bottom and the nutrients will be permanently trapped there. So, hindi mo kailangan irekta kapag gagamit ka ng inorganic fertilizer. You need to mix the fertilizer to water and kailangan mo siyang haluin hanggang sa matunaw bago mo siya ilagay.